We're going to have a kind of an informal conversation. So why don't we start with a few minutes of introduction? Charlie.
Good morning, everyone, and thanks for having me. Joe for inviting me. I got to admit, I was relatively surprised when I got the call from Joe to represent AFPM, the association formerly known as NPRA, here at your fine conference. I felt like I was going to be a cattle rancher at a vegetarian conference. We represent virtually all the refining and petrochemical capacity here in the country, over 98% of the refining capacity and virtually all the petrochemical manufacturers. We, in a little bit of opposition or different opinion as to Joe's fine remarks, I might add, they were fantastic opening remarks, although we disagree with a lot of them. I'm sure you're shocked. When we were talking about changing our name, I thought of why don't we just change our name to the Obligated Party Association, because basically that's what we are. We do have we need to work together, but we do have both short-term and long-term problems with the Renewable Fuel Standard. We do believe in the consumer choice and an open market is the best way to go. So, I'm here to tell you that, again, thanks for the invitation. And I hope we have a full and open, honest discussion because it's critical. We manage critical assets in the country. If these assets aren't continued to produce the fuel here in the United States, you're going to be blending your product with something maybe or maybe not from those same OPEC countries and other unsavory parts of the world. And that's not a good thing. We've got 3 refineries shut down already on the East Coast, two before that. And we're hoping and praying and working hard to make sure that's not a portray of the future. You mentioned it in your opening remarks there, Joe, about how we feel like we've got, we were forced to buy these things. These folks are supposedly registered by the EPA. We go out and do it. They're frauds. We have to buy them again. We get NOVs, and the EPA says to us, caveat emptor. So it's like you going to a stockbroker buying stock. It's fraudulent. The feds come in and say you got to buy it again, and by the way, you got to pay a fine for buying it. So this makes no sense. But going forward, now we will work with you. We've got to get our own act together. We've got to get our lawyers huddled. But on the total RFS and Joe, when you mentioned the RFS, and rightfully so for you and your fine organization, you're looking at this part of it. When the refining industry sees the RFS, we see the whole thing. And for us, it is not working as intended. Or maybe it is, and that's really a problem for us. If anyone out there in the real world would have, over time, 22% of your market mandated away, I don't think you're going to stay in business too long. If you have to go out and buy credits, RINs, for a product that doesn't exist, EPA knows it doesn't exist, what the heck are they thinking? When you have to go and you blend a product that's going to lower gas mileage, at the same time, EPA is telling you to reconfigure your product to increase gas mileage. When you have to blend a product, it's going to increase. When you come out with regulations that you have to put equipment on the refinery that's going to increase CO2, at the same time they're telling you to decrease CO2. You wonder why we're a little bit paranoid. And I will disagree somewhat again with Joe and probably most of you good folks out there. I believe the RFS is an anachronism. Perhaps in 2007, when we were looking at where production was in the country, natural gas, we're looking at the craziness going on in the world, which hasn't changed much, if anything has gotten worse. Back then, we all thought that we were an energy-poor country. We're not. We're an energy-rich country. When the president says we have an all-above solution, all the above solution and all in, then he retards the 700,000 barrels a day coming from Canada. Now, that's 700,000 barrels. That's 42 times 700,000. Joe just mentioned you good folks passed the 1 billion gallon mark. But, offshore, Bakken, Marcellus, Utica, Texas Eagle Ford, Barnett, we're energy rich. Should biodiesel be part of the mix? Positively. Absolutely. No question. Should there be a tax credit? Well, that's another story. Should there be a mandate? Well, if it's a good product, which it is, if it can compete, which it does, so be it. Again, we as the industry can't just focus on your particular bucket, as we call it. We have 4 buckets that EPA so graciously gave us. And I know I got a couple of good friends out in the audience, at least 2 of them, Paul and Mary from EPA are out there somewhere. So apologies to you guys, but you guys screwed this one up.
Joe, I want to clarify something too, because I'm sort of work both with Charlie and his members and your members, and a lot of the unhappiness with the RFS is really focused on the ethanol side of the equation. Not a lot, there's not a lot of criticism or critique in Washington, but there are some real problems. As Charlie mentioned, cellulosic ethanol doesn't exist, but they have to blend it or buy credits. We can't blend the X gallons of ethanol required under the credit because we're stuck at E10. We can't go to E15 because of legal. So in other words, I want to make sure your audience understands that a lot of the focus in Congress and happiness with the RFS is really with the ethanol components, not biodiesel.
I want to go back to the RFS and ask you, Charlie. I mean, will you participate? After the lawyers kind of get their things done, will you work with us on that?
Absolutely. But again, we have to run through a series of hoops. What day is today? Monday. Just on Thursday or Friday before I left the office, we got the notice of the 48 million invalid RINs by the one company. 48 million. And they got 1 NOV. Why only 1? I hope it's a big one. But no, we really have to ferret out how we're going to make this thing work. As long as it's on the books, we have to make it work. One of the problems we have with RINs and volumes is that if you look at the total demand, it's just flat, in some cases is declining over the years, especially since the price shocks at summer 2008 and recession of 2009. And you tell me whether we're in or out of a recession right now, I don't know. But the RFS is a volumetric, not a percentage. So if you look at what's happened, and Dan alluded to it earlier, again from the ethanol side, we're like this and the inexorable march. So that delta is out there a lot faster, so we have to blend more and more. And it may not be out there. We have to buy RINs, and this is part and parcel of the heart of some of the fallacy of the way the RFS had been written back in 2007. So we have problems in the industry of complying. Dan mentioned the E10 blend wall. We are really up against it. Probably end of this year or beginning of next, we're going to pass that magic E10. Now EPA came out and said that upon a petition from Growth Energy that E10, anything over E15 was good in automobiles from 2001 to 2011. They did it in 2 separate segments. I looked at my owner's manual, brand new car. After 17 years, I finally broke down and got a new one. And really, you got to read the owner's manual on these things just to turn the radio on these new cars. And I got to the point that was interesting to me is, and it's the fuel, and it said anything over E10 not recommended. That's lawyer speak for we're going to void your warranty if you put anything over E10 in here. It's a 2011 vehicle. As it turns out, Congressman Sensenbrenner asked all the autos, all of them, tell us what you think. Every one of them came back. Domestic, foreign, no, we're not going to do it. The marine manufacturer said, no, we're not going to do it. The outdoor power equipment people said, no, we're not going to do it. But EPA is going to come up with a 4x4 sticker on a gas pump that says, buyer beware. When was the last time EPA ever did a regulation that the consumer was responsible for its compliance? Again, that's why I keep going back to you, Joe, and your guys here. Now, we have disagreements, but blending, all the above, hey, fine. But we have substantive problems with the whole RFS, and unfortunately, you're part of it. You just can't extricate yourself from that total ESO 7.